Unfortunately, just a month before the Masters, Tiger Woods has suffered an Achilles tendon rupture and just underwent surgery to have it repaired. And in this video, we'll take a look at this injury, how his previous injuries might have contributed to this, and then what to expect in terms of the rest of his career and his return to professional golf. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and the goal in this channel, if you're new here, is to teach you more about the medical side of the sports world. So let's take a look at this statement here that came out today from Tiger Woods. So as he was ramping up his training and practice at home, felt a sharp pain in his left Achilles, which was deemed to be ruptured. And just this morning, he underwent surgery, his minimally invasive Achilles tendon repair. Everything went smooth, and he's expected to make a full recovery. So there's a couple of things here. Number one, when we see repair implies that they were able to take the two ends of the tendon that were ruptured and sew them back together, as opposed to a reconstruction is when you have to completely replace the tendon or the ligament. So for example, when you rupture your ACL and have an ACL surgery, that is most often a reconstruction where they take tissue from elsewhere in the body and use it to reconstruct your ACL. The majority by far of Achilles tendon injuries are repaired, meaning we're able to go back in and sew those two ends of the bone together. Some people who have really chronic ruptures, they have to do things like tendon transfers where they take certain muscles and swing them around to sort of replicate the Achilles tendon, but good to see nothing like that was needed here. This was your bread and butter, kind of run-of-the-mill Achilles rupture and subsequent treatment. Taking a quick look at our biodigital anatomy tool, just to review again our anatomy of the Achilles tendon. The Achilles tendon is a very long tendon that is contributed to from three different muscles. So three different muscles and tendons come together to form the main bulk of the Achilles tendon. Of course, the main one we're going to think about is the gastrocnemius. That's the calf muscle, of which there's a lateral and a medial head of the gastrocnemius. We can see then here that transition into the Achilles tendon at that muscle tendon junction. If we then look at this from the side, the muscle deep or below the gastrocnemius is the soleus. The soleus muscle extends a little bit further down than just where the gastrocnemius ends and contributes to the Achilles tendon from the underside. The third that we often really don't hear about at all in the sports world, and frankly, I've only seen injuries here a handful of times, is going to be the plantaris muscle. The plantaris is this really thin little muscle up around the knee with this big, long, skinny tendon that sometimes is a distinct separate tendon from the Achilles, other times kind of blends in to merge with the Achilles tendon proper. Now, when we think about ruptures of the Achilles tendon, the most common location is going to be the mid portion of the tendon. This is what's called a watershed zone, where the blood supply kind of comes in from up here in this direction and then comes from the opposite direction up that way. And you end up with this watershed zone, maybe 4 to 6 centimeters from the end of the calcaneus, where the blood supply is not as good, the tissue is not as healthy, and there's more propensity to have a rupture in this mid portion of the tendon compared to, say, all the way down at the insertion. Now, you can avulse the bone off of the calcaneus and pop the tendon up that way. You can get a rupture higher up here and more in this myotendinous junction. Those are going to be much more complicated, difficult injuries. So hopefully this was just kind of your standard bread and butter mid-portion Achilles tendon rupture. Now, I want to finish up by talking about the impact that his previous injuries and surgeries could have had on this. Important, first of all, right, this was his left side. All of his injuries, as you can see with that leg, the scars, the muscle atrophy, were on his right leg. And as far as we know, I don't think there's been any prior significant trauma to his left lower leg. There's a couple of different ways to look at that. Number one, if this had been to his right side, you'd wonder if there had been any grafting done with his previous surgeries in terms of muscle and tendon transfers. Probably would be a more complicated injury potentially, depending on what, if anything, had to be done with some of the gastroc muscles, etc. over here. So nice to see that it was on his presumably normal anatomy sided leg. Now, just as we get older, kind of at Tiger Woods' age, you're at higher risk for an Achilles tendon rupture than, say, when you're 15 or 20 years old. And I do wonder if to some degree, because of some atrophy, probable weakness in this right leg, he's just had more stress, more load and demand on that left side, and it's just gotten to a point where it kind of went beyond what the Achilles tendon can withstand. He probably had some degree of tendinopathy or tendon degeneration in that side before that sudden explosive movement led to the rupture. But at this point, there's really not much you can do, right? You have to work with what you've got. And so if you do have one side that's a little bit weaker, in order to function even daily life, you're going to put more demand on that good, healthy side. And unfortunately, this seems like a situation where potentially some of that just increased demand might have led to some increased wear and degradation of that Achilles tendon, contributing to the rupture. But Overall, if we were going to say, which side is better in sense for recovery and such, I'm glad this happened on his left side and not his already surgically managed and likely very different anatomy on his right leg. So the final part of this, is his career over? No, absolutely not. This is different than like an NBA player who's at his age, or of course I'd be very surprised if an NBA player at his age was still going, but you get what I'm saying. Golf is a much lower demand on the Achilles in terms of the need for explosive movements compared to other sports. Fantastic example, Bernhard Langer, who's PGA Tour star from back in the day, now playing on the Champions Tour, setting all kinds of records. He had an Achilles tendon rupture and I believe was back playing competitive golf in just like 3 to 4 months. So there's definitely a precedent there for being able to return to golf after an Achilles tendon rupture. And again, the lower demands in terms of explosive type of stuff, absolutely, I think Tiger Woods has a great chance to make a recovery here. With everything else layered on top of it from his health history before, yes, that complicates things, but by no means is this like the last nail in the coffin, so to speak, and going to be a sign his career is done. This hopefully is just a temporary setback for him to then still continue to be able to play periodically at hopefully a high level. Now, yes, he's going to be out for these majors in the first half of the year. Probably still going to be out for things later in the half a year as well, with stuff like the British Open or the Open. Yes, that's maybe 4 months away at this point, but I would be very surprised if he's back in time for those just with his conditioning beforehand. This is probably going to be a focus on next season, and hopefully everything's ready to go at the beginning of next season, but we'll see, of course, with his recovery moving forward. So that's it for the video, everybody. Hopefully this was educational. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below, and until next time, we'll see you later.